Mr. Lombardo?
Yes, Robert Lombardo, 12 High Street, Westerly, Rhode Island. Can I ask Mr. Boren a question? Is that okay?
Just through the chair, we're collecting information, and then we're not going to have a debate or a trial, so to speak.
No.
Just if you
One
want
thing,
to
one thing this town does not like to have is a debate. We're perfectly
Right.
understanding
Point of
that we
order.
do not debate in this town. We just
point-
make crazy.
One minute.
Point of order.
Mr. Gagne, point of order.
Point of order, I would suggest that anyone making comments up there, make their comments to the president.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Boren said something that I've been arguing for quite some time, and that was, if I understood him correctly, that there was a conflict. He was representing Jack Payne, he was representing Michelle Buck, who were sued as individuals, not in their capacity. And also the town of Westerly, and I believe at one time, and I can be corrected if I'm wrong, he also represented the zoning board for the town of Westerly. That's 4 clients, and I think he said, at least with Michelle Buck, that there was a conflict there, or was a potential conflict. And according to the rules of professional responsibility, if you have a client, more than one client, that there might be a potential conflict, you're supposed to get, from each of the clients, informed consent to proceed, confirmed in writing. So my question would be, does the town have a written consent to have Mr. Boren represent the town, while it was also representing Michelle Buck? And I've said that this, and this is not going to go away. Michelle Buck can cry and complain and say it's
Yeah, we're not
unfair. I can say whatever I want. I thought we got past the point of First Amendment, Ms. Sarah. You do not have the hammer anymore.
Point of order. You know, Mr. Lombardo, that we can't have, point of order, please. We're not going to have threats and
There were no, could you explain the threat, Mr.
Disorder.
Duhamel? What was the threat?
I perceived a threat to our town manager.
In which way? Could you explain
don't
it
have
so
to
I don't
debate
do it again?
I don't have to debate it. It was a threat.
All right.
You
But
made the-
I thought we got to the point where we hammered it into your thick head that we're not going to have the only way you can stop speech is if it's disruptive.
I think the rules that I'm going to follow are if they're disruptive, if they're condescending. You can give all the criticism you want, but don't be threatening.
I'm not. You just said condescending. If I get up here and tell you how great you are, you'll let me talk all night long. But if I criticize one hair on your head, you shut me off. And it's because you're insecure in your positions.
You're going there again, Mr. Lombardo. Do you have a point
would-
that you would like to make, or do you want?
Yes, I was making a point. Do you have consent confirmed in writing for the conflict that you had?
I've got
And that's the problem with the dystopia that's now fallen on this government. It's absolute dystopia, and it's because of the dishonesty of your town manager and the incompetence. Okay? But I want to get back to Mr. Boren's presentation. And I want to get to Mr. Gagne was asking about this boundary agreement. I have never seen the boundary, I've never seen any document that shows that boundary agreement was recorded. But it doesn't matter anyway, because it didn't transfer property as Mr. Gagne was trying to make. That property is still owned by Newcastle Realty. That boundary agreement didn't change it. That's why there's no closing. That's just some kind of phony boundary agreement. It doesn't mean anything. I haven't seen it recorded anywhere. And Mr. Boren, I was in court because I represented Mr. Dubois, who was left hanging. He's on the road. The road is clearly on Newcastle's property, and you let him be prosecuted. And so I was sitting there with Mr. Manfred when Mr. Boren dropped off the maps, and we looked at them. And Mr. Manfred, you know, when you have the town map showing that that road is definitely on Newcastle Realty's property, I don't care about this boundary agreement. It's their property. he had to dismiss the case. But you prosecuted this guy because he dared to sue the town. That's dishonest. I'm sorry. What do you want me to say? You can take a guy who's not on somebody's property and prosecute him for weeks, and that's okay. But if I get up here and call somebody dishonest for doing it, I'm wrong. You do not have the moral authority to tell me that I'm doing something wrong by speaking when you tried to take away somebody's liberty dishonestly. Now, Robert Craven. It's very interesting. I met Robert Craven not too long ago, and we were talking about how Mr. Boren became the attorney for the town of Westerly, and I find it interesting, and I want to thank you that it was Michelle Buck, because I didn't know that. I'd heard from Bob Craven that I believe that Michelle Buck had an affair with a guy, or it was a boyfriend, Mr. Barbley or...
That's not material to this.
Yes, it is. I'm getting to know.
It's not material to this, Mr.
No,
Mr.
you just
Lombardo.
listened to
You
Miss...
can't get to the point. I'm going to have you removed.
You're going to have to do it. If you want to arrest me, you can. I'll turn around. But he's going to have to order it. And the town council, go ahead. But I'm telling you that Michelle Buck boyfriend got the attorney for the town. And she's the one who introduced him, and she's the one who stayed in this case the whole time. She was up there advising the council while she was a defendant. How ridiculous is that? Two co-defendants, and one defendant tells the other defendant what to do. It's unheard of. And how is that not on point? You don't want to talk about the things, the insidiousness of the dishonesty in this town. You want to cover it up. I'm not going to allow that to happen. Now, the other thing Mr. Boren didn't hit on is before he settled with the town, he was facing Rule 11 sanctions. Those are sanctions against the attorney himself, personally. I don't know if it had any influence, but Rule 11 sanctions are not filed that often. They were filed in this case, and there was also a motion for sanctions because of the discovery violations. They didn't turn over, Town of Westerly did not turn over the documents that were asked for. That's a discovery violation. Those are the same type of emails that now Michelle Buck can't find. It is coincidental. But that's going to have to be looked into further. But that's the problem. You were not playing fair. Also, the reason Bob Craven was thrown under the bus is because when he was subpoenaed for his deposition, he brought all those documents that the town refused to turn over. And they weren't favorable to the town. So, what did they do? They throw Bob Craven under the bus. Now, Mr. Craven, and there's emails, and I've sent them to the town council, of Michelle Buck saying, Bob, here's the document, just sign it. You got him. You can't get around that. She was ghostwriting all these things, and they were poorly done because she's not competent. The other thing about Craven's deposition, he was asked a series of hypothetical questions. Since he hadn't written the order, Michelle Buck had, he couldn't tell if the hypotheticals were facts or not. They were. They were hypotheticals. And Mr. Boren made no attempt to rehabilitate Mr. Craven. None whatsoever. He could have easily been rehabilitated. And when you tried to speak up, I think you were told by the other attorneys to sit down and shut up. And you did. And I was embarrassed for you. Now, the Supreme Court case, yes, the consent order, I have no idea if it's good for the town or not. Mr. Boren can say that. But I do know that there is a problem with that case going forward, and I think he should have addressed that. And that is the problem of due process, that zoning cases were never heard. Never heard any zoning cases. They were taken from here, they went up to the Superior Court, and then there was a settlement. So there was never any zoning hearings. And I think it'll come back for that reason. I might be wrong. I'm hoping it'll come back. But he didn't discuss that, the chances of that coming back for those reasons. And I would like to hear from him what he thinks about those, not the consent order, but on that. But I think the thing that links, and I don't care what you think of me, because you have not had a good week. Since the last time you threatened to have me arrested and thrown out, you have had a very bad 6 weeks.
Right.
You
That's
should be
not
in-
on point, Mr. Lombardo.
All right, and Mr. Marsh's statement was on point. Now, finally, the thing that connects these two cases that we have here tonight with Mr. Kinder and Mr. Boren is Michelle Buck. Remember, she was not appointed. She competed against no one, because had she competed against anybody, she would not have won. She would not be the town manager. She was a bad solicitor, and she's a
That's not on
bad...
point. That's,
Enough.
No, you...
Yes, enough.
No,
Diane, please.
Miss
No,
Suri,
I'm tired of him standing at that podium.
that's too bad.
Finding everybody
That's
out.
too bad. That's too bad. You don't have any control. As you said in that tape, your 20 years of power are over. I don't know where you think you have 20 years of power. Power. I have
All right,
20,
that's enough. I'm going to call...
24.
I'm gonna end it.
24 years of power. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to see if he was doing that to you, okay?
That's part of the deal. You cannot argue with the people at the podium.
Well, enough.